What's going on, everybody? You're alive with Osiris, and welcome to the Author's Lounge. I greatly appreciate everyone's time for just taking a moment out of their day to tune in to my episode. And as everyone knows, the purpose of this podcast, this platform, is not only to help authors get their work out, but to really help authors and their branding. People generally buy from people they like, and so I want to be able to cultivate an environment where we can just get to provide information on for the authors so they can get to be in a better headspace with the buyers or just with the public in general. And so that's why I decided to bring this back. But speaking of which, I got a good buddy of mine who I've been supporting for a long time. He's been a supporter of mine. It's more like a teacher, and even though we're kind of close in age, like a teacher to the student, and we're gonna dive into a lot of material. So let me pull out this fancy cell phone here, and I want to read off his bio. Now, as I mentioned, this is a person who needs no introduction, but I wanted to just pay him the proper respect and provide him with one because he has a great deal of accomplishments. All right. Our guest today is arguably one of, if not the most prominent voice within the independent book publishing scene. He has over 50 published books in multiple languages. He is the number one best-selling author on Amazon, and on Amazon in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Spain, India, Australia, Italy, and Brazil. His works have garnered him an impressive 42 plus book awards, with more coming in. He has multiple YouTube channels, with one specifically targeted in educating newcomers and veterans alike on the book publishing business. He touches on marketing, advertising, book awards, step-by-step tutorials, podcasts, and countless editions on his channels. He has over 100,000 subscribers across social media and has earned a silver play button awarded to him by YouTube. And while on the topic, our guest YouTube channel was voted by FeedSpot as one of the top 50 YouTube channels for self-publishing. Wow, this is incredible, man. Let me keep going because there's more. With an unmatched work ethic, there is no end to this. There is no end to his accomplishments. Oh, and a fun fact. Our guest today was an accomplished fitness trainer and was once a professional wrestler under the name Lewis Roberts. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you 42-time award-winning, number one best-selling author on Amazon, legendary, and my buddy, Dale L. Roberts. What's going on, man?
Shoot, man. I feel like we need to have an audience here, man. You've done all that introduction. I don't think we need to say no more, but thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, not too many people point out the whole pro wrestling background. Sweet Lou Roberts is what I used to go by.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I grew up a wrestling fan. Grew up watching WWF, WCW, OVW, AEW, just a long-time wrestling fan. Are you still into the sport?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a lot of friends that are still in the business and applying their trade in very big ways. So I'm very fortunate to have known many of these folks, and I'm happy to have been connected with them over the years.
That's great stuff, man. So I wrote down a lot of questions, but I like to do things organically, but I wanted specific things because I think it's important for people to understand the idea behind it. So so you've been in this business a long time. Have you ever a long time. Have you ever considered, based off of your knowledge, what you've been able to accomplish, ever considered starting your own publishing house, if you haven't already?
It's so funny. A lot of people have asked me that. And actually, a good friend of mine, Mark Brownless, big shout out to Mark. He's one of my best buds in this business. He had said that a long time ago. When I ended up buying, it's funny enough, I bought over 1,000 ISBNs through Bowker because it's cheaper to buy in that largest of bulk. And I thought, you know what? This is going to be generational. I'll just go ahead and will that over to my nephews or nieces or something like that. But I had said that to Mark, and Mark was like, man, he goes, I know how you could do this, ISBNs. You need to do your own publishing house.
Right.
And I've, to a certain extent, I do have my own publishing imprint because early on in the business, because I started a decade ago, I had written and published a lot of my own books and even done ghostwriting for my own books. But I also found that I was kind of hitting that ceiling. I wasn't going to be able to get as much revenue unless I started to scale this up. So that's when I started hiring out ghostwriters. And then I also dipped my toes into the low content waters. This was early on, before it was real popular, 2015, 2016. You literally could smear poop on a book and put it on the marketplace and people were buying it. Don't do that, by the way, folks.
Yeah, no.
But, no one was talking about low content books back then. So you were making stupid money right around then. But yeah, I did. The only reason why I don't have any interest in doing my own publishing house is it requires a lot of work. It requires relying on other people outside of myself. And I find that anytime I've tried to scale my business and bring other people on, there's a selfish part of me, almost to a certain extent, where I want to do everything and I know I can't do everything. But then as we start to scale that out and start to build that, I lose interest in it, because it's almost becomes too big and almost unmanageable. That is just not my interest. I've found through trial and error things I do enjoy and things I don't enjoy. And sometimes that monetary value placed on it isn't enough to keep me interested.
Right.
I would love to see a lot of indie authors get a lot more attention, a lot more of a spotlight. And this is a huge reason why I typically will reach into my community and interview some of the authors within my community over on my large channel or even on the podcast, because I'm like, okay, I can at the very least use this platform that I've built to showcase some amazing indie authors. You and I were just chatting about, indie authors before we got connected here, where I did the Little Free Libraries project. Now, if anybody's happened to be watching this or listening, look up any Little Free Libraries in your area. You can look at littlefreelibrary.org and you can find some local locations and you can just put your books in there. And I found that it's actually been a very good way to market and place your books in the right area, because these are readers that you wouldn't normally reach. And the cool thing is, from when I was talking with other readers that pull from Little Free Libraries, they typically, when they're done with that book, they'll slip it into that Little Free Library and then it just continues to circulate. So it works essentially like a library, but it's less of that friction that you would normally get in trying to get your book into an actual library. Because to a certain extent, yeah, if you have some, popularity, or if you have some stroke with a librarian, sure, you can get your book into a library, but it requires a little bit more work. Whereas a Little Free Library, here's my book, boom, slip it on in there. But I ended up showcasing a lot of the indie authors instead of my own books because, one, I'm just very much a servant-minded individual. It's not that I feel like I should be a servant to everybody else, but I feel like I have had the privileges that a lot of people don't have early on in my career. Sure, I'm a decade into this business, but in the same instance, I know there's some people who've been in this business a lot longer and don't have that platform that I do. And I would love to get it to where at least one new reader discovers their work. And so I'm just big about indie authors. I love to help them out in any capacity that I can. And you'll hear that from a lot of people, but usually like, buy my $10,000 course. Yeah. I don't have a $10,000 course. I mean, and maybe I could put a $10,000 course out. I'm sure maybe I could, but I wouldn't feel right about it because, again, finding out the trial and error of like what resonates with me, what do I like and what do I dislike. And I don't know. The $10,000 course is not the route that I like to go down.
Right. And I think too, like to caveat off of that, just as a buyer or as a customer listening to someone who's trying to promote a course for X amount of money, not with you, but it could come across sometimes as scammy, or they're just trying to take my money, or am I going to really get what I'm looking for? And so if they know you, like me, I've been following you for many years, and so if you were to say something like that, I would know there's legitimacy behind it. Like, okay, Dale's putting this thing together. He's trustworthy. He's not somebody who is trying to like rip you out of your money. He's a man who is about his word, and just look at his track record of the amount of people he's been able to help. So if you that theoretically were to do something like that, I think it would sell. But I agree with you, man. Like I think when it comes to like, cause myself, I'm managing a publishing house right now, and it's a beast. It's a beast. And
no joke, right?
It is no joke at all. But I felt like, you know what? Okay, let's see what I can do with it. Like I'm going to San Francisco next week from February 7th, and I'm going as a publisher and as an author, and trying to help, really trying to help teenagers kind of get their footing. That's really who I'm targeting, is teenagers, to get them started, not to do anything to hold them, but just to get them the confidence to be able to just push forward and feel like, hey, I can do this long term. But to kind of caveat back to what you were saying about, I want to not necessarily focus right now on on the $10,000 idea, but more on the idea of you going from being a wrestler to a fitness trainer to a best-selling author. How did that even happen? How did you
uh,
go through one, two? There's such different worlds. How
yeah,
did that even
it's
come about?
well, my life is very funny, and it will read
Yeah.
almost like I'm just making this stuff up. Because fresh out of high school, I was 17 years old. My father allowed me to leave the house after because he graduated. You're good to go, and so I ended up moving out. I got my first full time job working. Well, technically, my very first job was working in a washer dryer facility. It was like a late shift, and it was horrible. It lasted like 2 weeks, and I remember I begged my uncle, who I was staying with temporarily at the time. I was like, man, you give me any job besides this one. This job sucks. I think I got paid $4.25 an hour. It's it was, and there's no tips, by the way, folks.
Yeah.
So at any rate, he got me into the healthcare industry, and that's when I became a state tested nurse aide. So I was able to care for a lot of folks over in a long-term care facility and a subacute unit, essentially nursing home. That's what a lot of people say. And I did that for about 4.5 years until I just about drank myself to an early death. That's no exaggeration. I really partook of alcohol at a very young age, and unfortunately, it started doing its damage, and I knew that I needed out. And but I loved working with the elderly. I loved working with seniors. It was my favorite thing. It was my passion. And so thankfully I'd transitioned over into the world of activities director or assistant at the time. And that's where I'm paid to play with senior citizens. It was wonderful. It was great. It was fantastic. But it just, as I kind of went along, there was something that silently screamed at me that I needed to get into the world of pro wrestling. A lot of people are like, what? Why? Like, I was not a fan of wrestling when I grew up. I was told it was fake. I was like, you shouldn't watch that. Like, okay, great. I didn't watch it. But as an adult, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Yeah. Why aren't people watching? This is so entertaining. And like, everybody's like, yeah, it's fake. I'm like, yeah, so are movies. Does that stop you from going and watching a movie? Like, I love wrestling because it's just so beautiful. And I love the athleticism. And that is when the fitness bug hit me. Yeah. Because I was literally like, I want to be just like that. I want to be larger than life. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to portray just confidence, just have it oozing from me. Yeah. And so my thought was this. It was a 1-2 punch. I thought, okay, let me just take the world of activities director and working with the seniors, and let's just put it on hold for right now. And what I did was I became very deeply involved in just learning all about fitness. And then I ended up getting certified with American Council on Exercise as a personal trainer. I ended up working at a chain gym. I freaking crushed it. Like 4.5 years in that business, I freaking loved it. Now, the reason why I did the personal training was I saw an issue when I was going to a lot of independent shows. I always just kind of thought to myself, now, this is not to knock any wrestlers that are overweight or out of shape or anything, or appear to be out of shape, because there are a lot of fantastic wrestlers who are very large men or large women who can move and go about and look good. But there was a lot of times where I was just like, you know what, there's a demand here. I felt like if I can become a personal trainer, this would be a great way for me to build relationships within the wrestling business. So that way I could be able to give advice when people want it. And the funny thing is, it worked. It worked. A lot of people were like, oh my gosh, Sweet Lou, he's a personal trainer. You should go ask him about, a diet and exercise program. And I'm like, and it was great. And I never charged anybody. I always gave them free advice because I thought, this was going to be something that would come back around to me. Now, I did wrestling, but unfortunately, wrestling just wasn't for me. I wanted to. Every part of me. It broke my soul that I couldn't continue. But the thing is, it's a very physical business. And my body just couldn't handle it. I mean, I did it. Yep, absolutely. And to this day, I still feel the ill effects of that. And I'm not regretful. There's no regrets whatsoever. But thankfully, as that story kind of ended, is about the time that my story restarted into the business of the healthcare industry. Yeah. And being back in the healthcare industry, I literally just shot up. We went out to Arizona, my wife and I worked with a fantastic company called Bethesda Senior Living. They're based out of Colorado. Yep. They saw something in me and they mentored me and they started just bringing me out to a lot of corporate events. I got to train other activities directors. It's crazy. I got flown around the United States to teach people how to play with senior citizens. It was the wildest thing. But in me, there was something that just said, this isn't it. I
Right.
mean, I wasn't unfulfilled necessarily in doing that work, but I felt like this isn't it, right? Because in the meantime, I really yearned to actually have much more freedom. I
Right.
wanted to be with my wife. I wanted to spend time without that interruption. I didn't want to have to answer to a boss. And so it was one day that my corporate wellness coach said, "Hey, you love fitness so much. You should write a book about it." Now, I didn't lay the groundwork for this. My apologies. My storytelling's been terrible. It's been backwards or whatever. But I literally have been dreaming of this since I was a kid. I went to college to become a writer, and unfortunately, within a year and a half, I dropped out because I felt jaded. I felt misled. I felt upset. I had a huge ego. I just was not ready for something like
Right.
that. But now, as an adult, I was like, I'm going to do this. And within a year, I wrote my very first book. Now, don't try to look for the book. Well, you probably can find the book from third-party sellers that are selling it for $100 or $200. Which don't do that. If you want that book, I'll give you a summary. It's bad. But it was that warning shot to the world that I needed to put out there. And when I got my first paycheck, I'm not kidding you here, Osiris. Like, I put in my notice with my employers. They were shocked. They were like, "Oh my gosh, what?" And the rest is history. The first 2 years sucked. I will tell you this: don't just randomly quit your job based on a $20 paycheck. It's not a good idea. But I wouldn't change a thing because I got to learn a lot about myself, and I got a lot to learn a lot about the business of not just writing, but also publishing. And that's a huge reason why I ended up delisting that first publication. I tried to rework it, but every time I'd open that thing up, I was like, oh my gosh, not even my mom's going to hang this up on her fridge. This thing's ugly. So yeah, that's my story. And I think I've given you the unabridged version. My apologies for going long on that.
No, you're good. No, you're good. But I think that's important for people to understand that it's a journey to get to the destination, and
Yeah.
and knowing how it's all started, it does resonate very well with me specifically, and I'm sure with other people who've heard your story and heard this version of the story. Because like anytime you want to be a writer, people who don't understand just don't understand. And I got laughed at when I told people who I've worked with in the past I actually want to be a writer. I think I'll be a great writer. And with college, I wasn't in college for writing, but it's so skewed in the way that they teach. And as a creative writer versus like an English teacher who knows their version of writing, it's kind of hard to make the two like meet in the middle.
Yeah.
But you found your way, and you know that that's what you want to do. So while on the topic, right, of knowing, and I'm sorry, I know I got you until 1:30, so forgive me if we go a little over um in time. But and knowing and knowing who you're targeting, right? How important is it to know your audience when writing a book?
Oh, it's absolutely it's critical. Now, what you can, let me give you permission though. It is important that you should follow your muse. You should write for you. That's what that first draft is all about. It is definitely write for you, because if you don't, it's going to be a very laborious process, especially if it's going to be your first book.
Right.
But once that first draft is done, all bets are off. That's when you need to start thinking about that reader. Now, someone who's a bit more experienced, if you already have a few books underneath your belt, you've already kind of gotten your reps in and such like that, yeah, absolutely. You need to dial in who are you writing this for, and try to write that for them, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you when it comes to editing. The reason is, let me share just a story, and I've actually shared this numerous times in some of my publications. A good friend of mine, Mark Stafford, over in Arizona. I was so geeked up when my first book was done. We got together. I think it might have been like at a Ruby Tuesdays, or maybe it was like a TGI Friday, and I was just like, "Oh, we're gonna meet up with Mark." And I was handing my book on over to him. That thing was all bowling shoe ugly, but I'm sitting here beaming with pride. And he's like, "Who's this book for?" I'm like, "What do you mean? This book's for everyone. Like, why wouldn't it be?" He's like, "Okay." He's like, "This is a health and fitness book, and it's for everyone?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" He's like, "So you're telling me you give the same advice for a teenager that you would a senior citizen?" And I'm like, well, I did. And he stumped me. And like, initially it was a knee-jerk reaction. I remember I internalized it. And I remember thinking, like, how dare you? Like, I wrote this for everyone. Don't you understand? But he brought up a great point. Like, you got to know your audience, because if you don't know your audience, if you try to write for everyone, you're writing for no one. And that's just the biggest lesson. And I'll tell you, I owe Mark Stafford a big one, a steak dinner or something like that, because to this day I've used the story every single time, and it holds truer and truer and truer, because audiences really need to know that you care about what you're delivering to them. Because if they open up that book and it's just all vague advice on a nonfiction book, or it's some cross-pollinated, cross-genre, multi-genre fiction book, they're going to be confused. They don't know what to do, and guess what it's going to do? Boom, close that book and goes on the DNF pile. No one wants to read none of that stuff. So yeah, dial that in. It's so important. You don't have to have it perfect. No, you don't need to be like, well, I'm going to write my book for a man that's 28 years old living in Columbus, Ohio, and he likes werebear shapeshifter. No, you don't need to get that exact. But you need to get a little bit more precise, so that way you can kind of know exactly what you're writing about, who it's for, and it makes it so that you have way less friction. But again, this is your first book, man. You just, all bets are off. Write that book for you, and then make sure that when you go into that editing, you get yourself a good professional human editor and get to tear that thing apart, because then they'll be able to see a lot of like the holes within your publication or within your manuscript before it becomes a publication. So that way when it goes out into the world, it finds the right audience, and that audience resonates with it, and they share with other readers, and then it becomes pretty much viral at that point.
Exactly. You know, the caveat off of that as well. You know, one thing that you said that really stood out, because I said it as you were saying it, kind of under my breath, about, is if you write for everyone, you write for no one. Yeah. And that was an important lesson that like I learned as well when I was like writing my first poetry book, like with Sacred, and I had so much material and that's for everybody. But then I learned really quick that that's not how you can really market a book and how you can really brand it. And so I was really specific in Dear Sick Mental Virus, which, fun fact, everyone, with Dale and I, we were somehow ended up in a competition, in the same competition, with Outstanding Creator Book Awards. And yeah, there it is. And shout out to Steve, by the way, over the CEO over there, Outstanding.
Steven's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a really good. I was actually asking him if he wanted to come on to the show, but he's going to get some things down packed, and I know he mentioned your name as well, so I told him I'd give him a little a shout out as well. He helped me out immensely. Not that he gave it to me, or same with me, not that he gave it to you. You know, the books were earned, but what I was saying was that, fun fact is that Dale and I, student and teacher, or teacher and student, in the same competition with each other, and I placed 24th, and I forget you were much higher on the list. But you know, it's awards. You know, they matter, and so, and where I'm headed with this, Dale, is what significance does an award have? And you have like over 40. What significance does having awards do to you as an author and as a brand?
Well, it certainly strokes my ego. I ain't gonna lie about that. And I mean, come on, everybody wants to have an award. I mean, everybody likes to have that recognition, and that definitely is a huge part. But all joking aside, it is a marketing tool. I've had so many times in the past where some people ask me, like, why are book awards so important? Why do you always push book awards? And is it going to sell more books? But that's almost the same thing. Like, you could ask the same thing about reviews. Like, some people go, you know, okay, why are reviews so important? It's third-party credibility. Because it's not enough that you say your book is awesome. It's more important that somebody else says it for you. Because you could go out here going, like, flexing your muscles like King Kong, going, my books are awesome. And people are like, look at this friggin' blowhard. Shut up. And whereas somebody else goes, oh, dude, you got to go check out this dude, Osiris. Dude's got some of the best books on the marketplace today. That is why reviews are a great marketing tool, and book awards. But here's the thing. With book awards, you got to be a little more active in using it as a marketing tool. So let's just say, for instance, we are submitting our book to Outstanding Creator Awards. Since we already mentioned it, Outstanding Creator Awards, they give a number of great prizes and things like that. Like, I got a medal, I got that trophy. That's fantastic. First thing, you noticed I put it over on my bookshelf. So that way, anytime a video comes up, people see this award and they will acknowledge that. Now, more importantly, though, I'm going to be a bit more active. I'm going to mention in some of my email newsletter. I'm going to mention in my social media. I'm going to put it in some graphics that I can share over on my website. So that way when people show up, they know what's up. And I can put it over on my Amazon Author Central page. So that way people can kind of see this thing. And the important thing is this, is I try to shoot for recency. Meaning that it's not enough that I had an award back in 2022. Right. I want to have something more recent. So that way people aren't going, well, man, he must have got crappy after 2022.
Right.
Like, sure, we could probably get away with writing the success of a particular award for the rest of our careers. But me, I like to see the recency. And, obviously there's the other benefits. So whatever reach that Outstanding Creator Awards, as an example, has, they're going to share my book with their following. And hopefully it sells a few books. But to me, my main thing is to get that third-party credibility stamp, boom, put on that publication, share it with the world, and say, this is that. And here's the thing, is a lot of people assume that just because you've submitted your book for book awards that you're going to automatically win. Hate to tell you, not all awards programs are going to do participation trophies. And I will tell you that probably Steven Serrell, being a CEO and founder of Outstanding Creator Awards, doesn't give awards to every single book. It's the facts. There are a number of other ones out there. Pulitzer Prize, they don't give awards to everybody. So when you do get an award, it's a pretty big deal because there are literally hundreds of thousands. Yeah, Literary Titan, that's another good one. So many great book awards out there. So the important thing is when you're going for book awards, you remember, it's not enough that you submit to the book award. You need to just share it with the world. You need to share it every single time you have any type of a release. You need to share it within any type of interviews. Like, thank you, by the way, for shouting out the 42 book awards. I think we're up to 43 now.
Okay. Congrats, man. You'll be at 50 by the summer.
Probably. That's actually not too far off.
With White Publishing for Authors, yeah, that one's probably going to rack up a stack.
Yeah. That was, oh gosh, that was a beast. We need a whole other interview for how much work that one was. My editor beat me up.
Oh man. So while on the topic, right? Like I know we're pretty much over. So I'll just get a couple more questions and I'll let you go on your way. But which one matters more to you, just as an author, between being a bestseller like 7 to 8 times, having your 43 awards, or having your podcast be named top 50 by FeedSpot? Like, which one of those
podcast? The podcast 10 times over. Bank over rank. That's what I believe in.
Bank over rank.
And I think it's fantastic. By the way, I think you tagged me. Somebody else tagged me over on Discord, sharing how like Wide Publishing for Authors is in pre-order right now, and it's been riding high at about #1 at a few categories since its launch. And I was just like, oh, cool. I'm a wide published author. Amazon bestseller rank is only secondary. So it was really nice that I got that. And much shout out and appreciation to people even noticing that. And of course, I don't try to dwell on that because I'm selling books at other places. So for instance, some people have bought through Barnes & Noble. Some people have bought through Kobo. Some people have bought through various other places. So bank over rank. Here's a good story for me to share with you. The first time that I hit the #1 bestseller status in multiple categories was in January of 2016. And at that time, I was elated. It required so much work. I didn't have much of a following to speak of at all. I didn't even have a freaking YouTube channel at that time. And I was so elated. And I remember my friends were all celebrating with me. I shared it on Facebook, and everybody's just popping the cork and going, yeah, #1 bestseller. And everybody's going crazy. And I go to my wife and I'm like, hey, I became #1 bestseller. She's like, okay, do you get more money? I was like, no, yeah, yes, no. And she's like, okay, well, what's it going to do for you? What are you going to do with it? And that's the important thing. That's another like aspect of things. You can use that as a marketing tool. #1 bestseller on Amazon in authorship, or #1 bestseller on Amazon in whatever your category might be. Sure, it's a marketing tool. But to me, I kind of like the fact that someone, without my prompting, saw my podcast and decided to put me in the top 50 with all these other amazing, incredible individuals. The Creative Pens of the world, the Sell More Book shows of the world, all these different podcasts, the ones that I have idolized, and to put me in that list, That's pretty cool. And I didn't even have to submit for anything like that. So that's why it's a little more special to me when I have someone like LA Weekly listing me on their top, their listicle for the top, content creators for self-publishing. To me, that right there, that's cool. That's awesome. And I didn't even have to use a service like Book Award Pro to get that. So, which, by the way, that's no slight to Book Award Pro. Book Award Pro is fantastic. This is not a sponsored podcast.
Yeah, no, not even as far as I've used Book Award Pro also, and they've been sensational with me and Hannah over there and her team are just tons of great people. And so, and speaking of which, Creative Pen, I got to ask you a question about Joanna, but I'll do that after, like once we go off.
Yeah, you got it.
But two more questions. This question is in regards to the color of your material. So I got a couple of your books here, right? Self-publishing for new authors and advanced self-publishing for new authors. And or not new authors, sorry, for authors, sorry. And as you can see, people who are watching, he's wearing the color orange. It's not a coincidence that this is also orange. Look at that handsome face. But my question is, why the color orange, and how has that helped you with? Because it's obviously for sure a branding move, and I freaking love the idea, and it's a bright color too, like Super Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog. So it was like it's really specific. So how did you come up with the concept of orange being the representation of your brand, and how did you even conceptualize creating a brand in general?
It was an accident, to be honest with you. My brand initially had started out with when I started in YouTube, my whole thing was, it was a means to an end. There were authors that had questions after I had some interviews on some YouTube channels. And so rather than me having to be tied up in DMs and emails, I thought I'll shoot some videos. And as the years kind of progressed, I started to kind of identify myself as the t-shirt and jeans guy. Like, I'm stripped down, because you would see all these hucksters over on YouTube where they're like dressed as a tens and buy their Lamborghinis inside their huge millionaire mansion. Like, I don't care about none of that. I don't want to have a mansion. What the hell, man? That's too much damn money. I've learned to not spend and squander my money on useless stuff. And to me, I'm happy. You can put me inside a freaking broom closet and I'm going to be all right. But it wasn't until about, I would say, a few years ago. A lot of people think that I've always done the orange shirt, but I didn't until about, I'm thinking it was 2020, maybe 2021. Mm-hmm. And I was working on a series called Book Rescue. And that's a whole story in and of itself. And my video producer at the time was just pulling his hair out, because he's like, okay, Dale, I can't use some of this footage. And I was like, why? He's like, well, your shirt keeps changing. I want to make it seem like it's, the same time as you're going through this video. And so he wanted to have like a timeline. So I'd have to go through and reshoot some of the things that I did and the same shirt that I was wearing at that specific time period. And so at the same time, I had a brand reach out to me called Into the AM. And this is this is not me shilling for them or anything. Got great products. They had wanted to do a sponsorship with me. And so they sent me a package of various t-shirts and loved them. It was fantastic. But I put on that orange shirt. And I remember looking at the orange shirt and I was like, man, that thing's ugly as hell. Who the hell's going to wear that damn orange shirt? I'm literally going like, who will wear this in their right mind? But I put it on and was like, oh, I felt almost like this. Like, I'm like, this is right. This feels right. Well, you fast forward to the time then when my video producer was like, hey, could you dial this stuff in? I was just like, all right, I'm not reshooting any more of these damn things. From now on, I'm wearing nothing but orange. So really it was a means to an end. That's awesome. The funny thing is, the reason why we went with the orange shirt was we were doing some split tests on some thumbnails for our videos. Every time that we would try something different than the orange shirt, we were getting less people watching the videos. We are having less of a click-through rate because of the orange. Anytime I changed to orange, boom, more clicks, more views, longer watch time. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with this at all. And my buddy, the video producer, Norton, I'm just going to go ahead and say, big shout out to Dan Norton. Norton says to me, he's just like, man, you should just go ahead and buy yourself a closet full of those shirts. You darn straight. I went ahead and opened up freaking Into the AM. I bought myself a lot. Now, it is crazy. If you ever go into my closet, it's like orange.
Nickelodeon style.
Exactly. You just literally I just get up in the morning, snatch that thing off. All I have to do is think, is today a work day? It's a work day. Boom. I pop that off. Anytime I put this orange on, it's almost like a signal to my brain, it's time to get to work. And so I put this on, it's a switch. So the marketing just happened by accident. It literally was just by accident. And now people are starting to recognize me for that. And it's crazy. It's great. And I don't even think Into the AM makes these orange shirts anymore. It was almost like I must have been the only one buying them. So yeah, here pretty soon I'm probably going to have to re-up. They're getting a little old, little worn, because I've already gone through a couple of them because, I mean, gosh, it's already been a good few years. And
Too much muscle? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to blame it on that right there, not the cakes that I was having over the holidays.
Nice, man. So the last question before I let you go is, obviously, I know where to find you. But how can people find you? Where can they reach you?
Dead simple, selfpublishingwithdale.com. You can be able to get everything you need to know, or you can just even look up Dale L. Roberts on YouTube. You'll see that I have two channels. I've got one big channel with over 100,000 subscribers, and I've got a smaller channel. That's the podcast. I live stream every Monday at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Daytime. You can get more details again if you go to selfpublishingwithdale.com.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping one day, when the stars align, if you're open to having more guests come on your show, I volunteer as tribute.
You got it, buddy.
Down the road, man. But okay, well, hey, thank you all so much. And let me just go ahead and just show this on his end, because he's humble and he's not gonna want to do it. So I'll do it for him. And he has a third one that it's out now, right? The Why Publishing for Authors is out, or is it still
Why Publishing for Authors will be out in 2 days. So I'm sure you're gonna broadcast this tomorrow, so it will be out the very next day. So get it now. Okay. If you're watching this right out the gate, it's 99 cents on pre-order.
There it is. Okay. Otherwise, what is it? February? No. What is today? Oh, February 1st. February 1st. This
February
Saturday.
1st. Yep.
It'll be available, and you all just continue to support the movement. He's a good guy. He's a great man, and he has been there supportive. And just from me to you, thank you so much. Just over the years of you, when I was just commenting on your videos and always being receptive to just helping me out and directing me over to people who I needed to go to, and you've always been there for me. And just as you have with other people, but like me specifically, you've just been present, man. And I'm giving you your flowers, dude, because it's a great deal of like my success and the route that I've been able to play is I owe a lot of things to you, and they're just the pathway you've laid out and just kind of following in your footsteps through the genres that I write, of course, my own genres, but like in the manner in which you've carried it, I've tried to emulate it in a similar fashion. It's like Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan, and you're bound to be successful if you just follow the ingredients of what the successor has done, and that's what you've done for me. And I mean, I even tried to rock the bald head like you, but you pull it off way better than me. But
you look good too, man.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. But in all honesty, just thank you so much for everything you've done and helping me be guided in the pathway where I can go and win awards and be able to help people. And now I have this platform to be able, and you have been gracious enough to come on. So thank you so much for your time, man. And I can't wait to continue on our friendship and just partnership, and looking more to you for guidance.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. So, hey, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day, and for you for taking an extended time out of your day, Dale, for tuning to today's episode of the Authors of the Authors Lounge. I got me all mixed up in the Authors Lounge. You all take care, and I'll catch you next time.